your Rock Auto. A little update. I switched over my water pump to the brand new GM water pump from Rock Auto. Just did a quick paint job on it. I don't know if I said this, but I have H&R poly motor mounts that I've had from a previous car. I've been holding on to them for a long time. Finally got those on. The cover's all done and painted. I got my oil block in there. We did all the rocker arms and the valve train geometry before. So I'm getting ready to put an intake on it. And there's a couple options with intake gaskets. I'm going to make this kind of quick. I don't feel like spending all day on this intake. I'm using this gasket because I'm way more comfortable with this gasket. Even though they're ported heads and everybody says to use this, the Fel-Pro 1200. I really don't like it. I'm not gonna lie. These ports are bigger, but not really where it matters. If you look at this center port, it's blocking the center of these chambers even more than the Fel-Pro one is. I mean, it hangs over big time into that port, so yeah. Okay, so you're not blocking over here, but you're blocking a whole lot in the middle here. And obviously you lose your sealing power, you lose your oil splash pan, which means that you'd be sucking all kinds of crap up into the PCV. I know that there are different ways you can cut this pan out and reuse it, which seems pretty damn difficult. I know that you can get a aluminum pan from GN1, which is really nice, but I don't feel like spending $50 and having a pan. I'm worried about how that pan would seal on here. And also, I mean, these are like a paper style gasket, you know, door preen, cardboard, whatever the heck you call this. This is an actual steel shim gasket, and I've used this on I've used this on this car for the last 5 years. When I first got the car, I put one of these on here, and I've just never had an intake problem. So I'm just going to use it again because I'm way more comfortable with this. And I put the intake on, and I use the flashlight and look down the ports, and I do not think it's a big deal. I don't think it's causing any sort of restriction in here that's going to be a major problem or cost me horsepower. I just don't. Also, I'm going to use these rubber things. This is a huge topic of discussion. You know, 10 people, 10 different answers. People RTV them up. I've done that on other cars in the past, and I just wasn't that comfortable with it, even though I didn't have a problem with it. But this car, I did use the rubber seals on the last time I did the intake gasket 5 years ago. And again, 30 pounds of boost every day of the week. Never had a problem blowing any of these things out. I never had a leak from them. I've test fit the intake, and I can't fit a 1/1000th feeler gauge between here and the intake when I put it on. So there's a really nice tight gap here. If I take these off, there's a good 1/8 inch probably between here and the intake, and I don't want to just make an 1/8 inch gob of RTV across here, because to me, I think this is just a whole lot stronger than RTV. I just dropped some of this cam lifter installation lube all the way down into my camshaft bores here, and try to hit every lobe with some camshaft lube, so that when I'm turning the motor and starting it up, hopefully some of these things have some cam lube on them. This is the surface of the bottom of my Champion intake, and again, I got this second hand. That's probably not a big deal. I'm sure it's not a big deal. But while I have it apart, I decided to break out this Hylamar spray again that I use on the head gaskets, because it's such a thick, like, adhesive, that I just coated the intake side of this gasket just to add a little bit layer of kind of cushion to absorb some of that imperfection in that intake manifold. So I'm going to let it dry really good. Usually let it dry 10 minutes. I'm probably going to let it dry 20 minutes because I still have to put some sealer on the water ports. First thing I want to do is add my right stuff into the corners, just to fill up that gap right there so nothing's coming through all 4 corners. Strips are in place. You can see I'm RTV'd in the corners, and I'm going to add some more RTV now to the top corners to fill any gap here between these 2 corners. And I'm going to run a very slight bead across here, just to get it almost like a bond on both sides here. So RTV, and a nice bead here for a bond, so when the intake sticks down, it kind of glues it to it a little bit. Not because I'm filling a gap, there is no gap. There's only 1/1000th of clearance between, actually you can't even get a 1/1000th feeler gauge between these and the bottom of the intake. So there really is no need for that, but again, I'm just gonna add it just to bond it to the bottom of the intake and kind of create a little seal. You can see I got my ports covered. These are the coolant ports, you gotta cover those in RTV. And the gasket might seal it, you might get lucky, but it's high pressure coolant coming through here, so you want to seal those. I've sealed the corners here, so when the intake sits down, these corners are double sealed. And I ran a real thin bead across the top of the rails just to seal the intake. I'm going to put some of this ARP torque fastener lube on the washers and bolt heads for the intake. That way when I torque it down, it's not a lot of resistance on this bolt and you get a pretty good torque reading out of it. I have my intake on and all my bolts in, and I'm getting ready to just torque them to sequence. So I'll put a pattern, just like the head pattern up, and torque them down. I'm going to go 20 foot-pounds first, make sure they're all 20, and then I'm going to move up to 32 foot-pounds, which is the final torque for the intake. And this is the final torque. I've already torqued them to 20 foot-pounds, went twice around because they'll loosen up in the middle. And then I brought it to 32, which is the final torque number, once, and now I'm going to do it a second time just to finalize it. It's a perfect torque to 32 all the way around. You can see how pretty straight shot that is with that Velcro gasket on there. This one you can see no gasket down this side. This side you see ever so slightly, but even, you know, in the video it even looks worse than it really is. This thing's starting to look like an engine. I'm happy with that pan gasket that I used, the Velcro tub style. And let me give you the part number of that thing. Everybody seems to know the part number, it's pretty popular. It's an MS 96033. And it's just a valley pan style Buick gasket. And I'm really happy with the way that these things seal up. I've had great luck with it. So fast forward, it's been a long day. I got the intake on. As you can see, I kind of hit the fast forward button and just start throwing parts on left and right. Like I said, I have the H&R poly mounts now. My oil block in. My intake on. These are my injectors. I put those in, switched them over. They're 60-pound Siemens deck injectors. This is my modified fuel rail that has a number 8 bung welded on it. All the stuff came off my old white car. I've been hanging on to it for years, knowing someday it was going to go on this car. But this is a Keith Meese fabricated plenum that used to be polished on my old car. I took it to work and powder coated it black. This is a AccuFab 70mm, or I think it's a 65mm throttle body. Billet vacuum block. Angled idle air control. I put all my sensors in. I put my coolant outlet in there, billet coolant outlet. See, I switched over from the Kerbin's polished regulator to this AccuFab that I had off the old car. Been hanging on to that. I put my EGR on here, EGR delete. This is my throttle bracket. Some fuel lines are just kind of mocked up, they're not really done. This is a number 8 feed. And the number 8 feed is cool because it kind of just, it goes right into the factory fuel line with this fitting here, which I think was from Racetronics, you know, years ago. I've had this for a long time. It was all in the white car. And what I'll do is I'll just tap into the original fuel line now, but if I ever want to add a filter here and then switch all the fuel lines over, which someday I'll probably do, just take that fitting off and switch it. This is a new return line I have from Classic Coil that was off the old car, and hanging onto that. See, when I got this intake, it was drilled out for 2 1/8" NPT fittings, so I put my boost gauge in here, and I put the 3/8 barb for the vacuum brakes. So this thing hopefully will be finished soon. Last thing it has is these the intake air temperature sensor, IAT. Usually you stick it in the air filter, but with this plenum, it has a bung in it for the IAT. Now, I won't be using that. It's just kind of a dummy for now because I have a turbo tweak chip, so I think the IAC is only programmed at idle or something like that. But if I ever switch this car over to a GNECU or Holly or Fast or something, it'll be able to read that right off the right out of the plenum, which is nice, instead of the air filter. But that's it for today. It's been a long day, so I'm wrapping it up, and I think I'm gonna have to order some headers because I found one of my factory one is cracked really bad, and I'll make a video about that. And I have valve covers on the way, and just kind of going downhill from here.